Power is a dangerous thing, especially when it falls into the hands of the wrong person. Rome had its fair share of great emperors, men who built, expanded, and reformed the empire. But it also had its monsters, and among them one name stands above the rest, a ruler so twisted, sadistic, and utterly depraved that history remembers him not for his victories, but for his cruelty and excess. He murdered his own family, burned his own city, and indulged in the kind of debauchery that even Rome, an empire known for decadence, found shocking. This is the story of Emperor Nero and how he became the most disgusting ruler Rome ever endured. Nero wasn't always destined for power. Born in 37 AD, he was the son of Agrippina the Younger, a woman who was just as ruthless as any emperor. She had one mission in life: make her son ruler at any cost. Nero's father died when he was just a few years old, leaving Agrippina to claw her way through Roman politics. She was no ordinary woman. She was the great-granddaughter of Augustus, Rome's first emperor, and she knew how to manipulate those in power. When Emperor Claudius took control, she saw her opportunity. She married her own uncle Claudius, securing her place as empress, but marriage wasn't enough. She needed to make sure Nero would rule. Through poisoning rivals, seducing senators, and gaining the loyalty of the Praetorian Guard, she convinced Claudius to adopt young Nero as his heir, pushing aside his own biological son, Britannicus. Then, in 54 AD, Claudius conveniently died after eating poisoned mushrooms, a death that many suspected was no accident. Most believed Agrippina was behind it, and just like that, Nero became emperor at only 16 years old. At first, Rome had hope. Nero had wise advisors, including the philosopher Seneca and the general Burrus, and his early reign was full of promise. He reduced taxes, supported the arts, and banned public executions. He even gave public speeches about justice and fairness, something no emperor before him had done. But power changes people, and for Nero it did not take long before he became a monster. The first victim of his madness, his own mother, Agrippina. At first, Nero listened to her. She had put him on the throne after all, but as he grew older, he resented her control. She constantly criticized his drinking, his affairs, and his obsession with performing on stage. She wanted a son who would be a strong Roman emperor, but Nero wanted to be an actor, a singer, and a poet, things the Roman elite saw as beneath an emperor. But what truly turned him against her was his affair with Poppaea Sabina, a woman Agrippina despised. She began supporting Britannicus, Claudius's son, as a possible replacement for Nero. Suddenly, Nero realized something. His mother wasn't just nagging him, she was a threat. At first he tried poisoning her multiple times, but she had built immunity, a trick she had learned after poisoning so many others herself. So Nero got creative. He designed a self-sinking boat, invited her on a lovely cruise, and had the ship collapse while at sea. But even that failed. Agrippina swam back to shore. Finally, he had no choice. He sent assassins to stab her to death in her own home. After the murder, Nero walked the streets of Rome, telling people how heartbroken he was. But no one believed him. Killing one's own mother was unthinkable, even for Rome. From that moment on, Nero stopped pretending to be a noble ruler. He was free to do whatever he wanted. With Agrippina out of the way, Nero descended into madness. He threw extravagant parties where guests would bathe in flower petals and feast until they vomited, only to eat again. He turned the imperial palace into his personal playground. He forced senators, noble women, and even married men into his twisted fantasies just because he could. His cruelty knew no limits. He had a young boy castrated, dressed him as a woman, and forced him into marriage, calling him his bride. This wasn't just about pleasure, it was about power and humiliation. Then came the Great Fire of Rome in 64 AD, one of the most infamous disasters in the city's history. Flames engulfed the city for 6 days, reducing entire districts to ashes. As the fire raged, rumors spread that Nero stood on his balcony playing the lyre and singing about the fall of Troy. Some even believed he ordered the fire himself, wanting to clear land for his massive golden house, a pleasure palace covered in gold and jewels, complete with a 100-foot statue of himself. As Rome lay in ruins, the people turned against him. They needed someone to blame, and Nero knew it. So he pointed the finger at the Christians, an unpopular religious group at the time, and launched one of the bloodiest persecutions in Roman history. He tortured them, crucified them, burned them alive, and fed them to wild animals in the Colosseum, all to shift attention away from himself. But despite his cruelty, his downfall wasn't far off. His reckless spending bankrupted the empire. His bizarre behavior alienated the Senate, and his mistreatment of the military led to open rebellion. Nero, sensing that his time was running out, fled the city like a coward, hiding in a villa outside Rome. As soldiers closed in, Nero panicked. He begged his remaining followers to help him escape, but no one wanted to be associated with him anymore. He tried to stab himself but failed, so he forced a servant to drive a dagger into his throat. His last words, "What an artist dies in me." Even in death, Nero remained as self-absorbed as ever. After his suicide, the Senate declared him a public enemy, erasing his name from inscriptions and statues. His beloved golden house was stripped of its treasures, and many of his statues were torn down or defaced. His death plunged Rome into chaos, leading to the Year of the Four Emperors, where generals fought for control of the empire. But despite Rome's attempts to erase his memory, Nero's name has lived on as a symbol of excess, cruelty, and madness. He wasn't just a bad emperor, he was one of the worst rulers in history. He destroyed his own family, turned Rome into his personal playground, and cared more about his music and perversions than he did about ruling an empire. Yet in a strange twist of history, some Romans actually missed him after he died. Rumors spread that Nero had faked his death and would return one day to reclaim the throne. This legend lasted for decades, with multiple impostors pretending to be the resurrected Nero, fooling desperate followers. It seems that even after all his crimes, there were still people willing to welcome him back. So was Nero truly the worst Roman emperor? Rome had seen its share of tyrants, but few matched Nero's level of cruelty, madness, and sheer depravity. He burned his own city, killed his family, humiliated Rome's elite, and treated human life as a joke. And yet his reign was just the beginning of Rome's long, twisted history of insane rulers. But that, my friends, is a story for another time.